Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Seti Warren. I'm the director of the Institute of Politics at Harvard Kennedy School. It's truly an honor and pleasure to welcome you all today at Loeb House for this special event sponsored by the Institute of Politics at Harvard Kennedy School and the Harvard Ukrainian Research Institute. The IOP was established in 1966 to fulfill President Kennedy's vision to inspire young people to get into public service and make a difference in the world. Today we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Ukrainian Institute at Harvard University. And in doing so, we have the privilege of hosting the First Lady of Ukraine, Olena Zelenska, to help us. To help us commemorate this landmark accomplishment and continue her work in promoting Ukrainian studies around the world. I know her efforts fulfills John Kennedy's vision of inspiring young people to get into public service. It's now my pleasure to introduce Serhiy Plokhy, Director of the Harvard Ukrainian Research Institute. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Seti. Thank you for this introduction. Let me extend my warm welcome on behalf of the Harvard Ukrainian Research Institute to the First Lady of Ukraine, Olena Zelenska. We are happy to host you, Mrs. Zelenska, here together with our sister institutions here at Harvard, the Institute of Politics and the Belfer Center of the Harvard Kennedy School. We are especially happy that you were able to come to Harvard to help us mark the 50th anniversary of the Ukrainian Institute and to help launch our journey for the next 50 years and beyond. We are honored to produce and promote what Harvard's motto calls good knowledge. In our case, it's good knowledge about Ukraine, its people, and now its struggle for freedom and dignity in the region and beyond. 50 years ago, the Ukrainian Institute was founded along with chairs in Ukrainian history, literature, and philology by two visionaries, Professor of Turkic Studies, and then first Hrushevsky Professor of Ukrainian History Emelian Pritsak, and a renowned Byzantinist Igor Shevchenko. Both trace their roots to Ukraine, one coming from its former Austrian and Polish part, another from the former Russian part of the country. Both were part of the post-World War II migration of talent to this country and saw as their mission development of Ukrainian studies at the world's most prestigious university, at the time when the Ukrainian studies were strangled by Russian imperialism and communist dogma in Soviet Ukraine. The Ukrainian institutions emerged at Harvard thanks to the foresight of the Harvard leadership at the time, in particular President Bok and Deans Franklin Ford and Henry Rosovsky, and the generosity of the Ukrainian community, which seemingly had so little to give, but gave so much to develop Ukrainian studies here at Harvard and also at other universities as well. The leaders of the Institute, Professors Pritsak and Shevchenko, and the leaders of the Ukrainian Studies Fund, which collected the money, were proud to launch the Ukrainian program at Harvard, but they also saw themselves as a continuation of the Ukrainian tradition of learning, and they traced their roots back to the Kyiv-Mohyla Academy and its founding back in 1632. They remarked occasionally that Kyiv Academy was founded 4 years before Harvard. They love to make this point. Thus, we have a symbol of Kyiv-Mohyla Academy on the Institute's logo next to the words Veritas and also to the word Harvard. We continue the tradition of linking Ukrainian studies here at Harvard with now revived humanities and social sciences in Ukraine. The Russian aggression against Ukraine that began in 2014 and turned into all-out war in 2022 put us in a special position in the American and world academia and media. As the main center of knowledge about Ukraine, its history and culture. We have been helped to rise to that occasion thanks to our colleagues at other centers and departments for which we are very grateful. We help to produce and spread good knowledge about Ukraine and its heroic struggle through our Temerty Contemporary Ukraine program of English translations of works of Ukrainian literature. Some of them are over there, you can see them. The first digital humanities project in the field of Ukrainian studies called MAPA Digital Atlas of Ukraine, as well as through our Summer Institute Journal of Harvard Ukrainian Studies, our library collections, and numerous academic initiatives. Mrs. Zelenska, your visit to Harvard we treat not only as a recognition of our and our predecessors' achievements, but also as a boost to our activities in the future. Thank you once again for coming to Harvard. And before you deliver your remarks on the role of global Ukrainian studies in Ukraine's fight for independence, let me properly introduce you to the audience. The First Lady of Ukraine, Olena Zelenska, graduated from Kryvyi Rih Technical University, majoring in urban and construction management. She worked for a number of years as a scriptwriter for Kvartal 95, a Ukrainian television entertainment production company. She was there since its foundation in 2003. Mrs. Zelenska's activities before the war, before the all-out war, had three main directions: children's health, equal opportunities for all Ukrainians, and cultural diplomacy. Since the start of all-out war, her efforts have focused on humanitarian aid, especially the evacuation of children with disabilities, the search for equipment for children's hospitals, in particular incubators for the newborns. In cultural realm, the First Lady initiated the project Books Without Borders, and 260,000 books, now maybe more, in Ukrainian, were printed for children who left their homes due to the Russian aggression and found shelter in 20 countries. The project called Ukrainian Bookshelf, to which we also just donated our books, is being carried out under the patronage of the First Lady. It provides for the distribution of Ukrainian literature and its translations in the world's leading libraries. More than 20 countries have already joined the initiative. Mrs. Zelenska is initiative and strong supporter of the academic initiative called the Global Coalition of Ukrainian Studies, which was launched in Kyiv earlier this month and which we at Harvard were really proud to join. Without further ado, I invite the First Lady of Ukraine, Mrs. Olena Zelenska, to make her remarks.
Thank you so much. I will speak Ukrainian, so I would ask you to use your headsets, please. As far as a representative of Ukraine and the First Lady of Ukraine, so I prefer to speak Ukrainian during my foreign visits, even though I know English not bad. I think so. But not such on such level to speak in Harvard. Добрий день ще раз.
Good afternoon once again, distinguished Director Warren,
Шановний професоре Плохій,
distinguished Professor Plokhy,
викладачі, студенти, гості.
professors, students, guests, it's a great honor for me to be here. I'm really excited. I don't think my dream to study at Harvard will ever come true. And I'm really envious of the students, our students, Ukrainian students who are studying here. Still, it is a great joy for us adults to see our children attend one of the most prestigious universities in the world. I'm always very happy to meet with students and with professors because I am sure you can be called the intellectual hope for the world. And it was hope that yesterday we were talking about in the margins of the General Assembly at the UN, where there's now a sideline event happening of the in the Silence of the Future Summit of the Future. We were talking about protecting children and what kind of world they will be living in. We were talking about what the world needs. The world needs hope, and hope is what Ukraine needs in its struggle. And everything that Ukraine is doing for its children, for its students, and this is something that we can also pass on to the world, how to carry on, how to live for the future, how to keep studying, how to keep teaching. In the morning, or a few hours ago, we gave the library a traditional gift, books. However, these books are not books in the direct sense of the word, because they were half burnt, and they were all that was left after a strike, a missile strike against a printing house in Kharkiv in May of the current year. These burnt books were gifted to you by us because we want you to remember the tragedy that happened that day. 7 staff of the printing house died that day, were killed that day, and a huge number of volumes of newly published books. And the books that we did find after the fire, we want to preserve them as a memory, as evidence of what Russia is doing to us. Unfortunately, in Ukraine, we see people killed every day. But to see the death of books, the killing of books, paradoxically was just as painful, because it was a direct metaphor. It was the killing of culture and a killing of science. This is like something out of a Ray Bradbury story. We were inside this anti-utopia. And it is very difficult to believe that in the 21st century, that should have been a progressive age, we are witnessing events that you can read about in anti-utopia. What is Russia doing is like a rusty time machine that is dragging us back into the past. Mass violence, terror against the civilian population, propaganda and totalitarian control of civil society, unfortunately, powerlessness of international community, international organizations. I don't think I need to explain why attacks on Ukraine is bad news for the whole world, but I guess I'll do it anyway, because any unpunished crime will undermine the world order and our common civilization. I have already talked about Ray Bradbury, but there's another author, George Orwell, and I know why. You know why I want to mention him, because we had some years ago published the first edition of the farm animals, which was translated by Ihor Shevchenko. This was actually a very interesting project. It was done by the Ukrainian Studies Institute of Ukrainian Studies here. This was really a visionary step, very brave step, when a young, unknown immigrant decided to bring this news, this knowledge about Ukraine, who was still under the Soviet censorship. Harvard Ukrainian Research Institute was speaking up for Ukraine and was disseminating true information about Ukraine. And this is why I can speak Ukrainian in these walls, because many of you understand it. Because Harvard Ukrainian Studies preserved the knowledge about Ukraine. And now when we have this threat hanging over us, they continue to do it. We thank Harvard for preserving the culture that is being hunted. It's the same as saving a life, more than one life. And to preserve a truth about one nation is to preserve the truth about the world. Over the last 2 years, Russia has been openly trying to destroy Ukraine. Our Ukrainians are fighting for our classical writers, our scientists, that the empire appropriated and is using for its propaganda, from Kazimir Malevich to Sergei Korolev. We need to fight to get our history back from the empire. And I'd like to thank Sergei Plokhy for doing this well before it became popular in Ukraine. And now everyone wants to get on it. And many nations around the world have gone through a decolonization. This is our time. We need to wash it. We need to wash the empire's myths out of our history. This is a difficult job, but this is what we need to do to survive. In July of the current year, in cooperation with the National Academy of Sciences of the United States, our embassy in the United States organized a partnership where we announced about an initiative about the Global Coalition of Ukrainian Studies. The coalition is meant to unite centers around the world, such as Harvard, where Ukrainian studies, history, culture, language are researched, are studied, to make sure that more people get to know about Ukraine, not from the news on the internet, but from the academics, from researchers, and also we would like to bring Crimea into these studies as well. It's again been subjugated by Russia. Crimean Tatars have earned the right to have an honest history and earned the right to have attention on them. It is now difficult to imagine, but the founders of Ukrainian studies, Professor Prytsak and Shevchenko, created them many years ago without the crowdfunding platforms, without the internet. They only had two things: a vision and a desire to speak the truth. And now let's see how much we can do today in order to promote the knowledge about Ukraine and about its history, having everything at our disposal. In the world of fakes and disinformation, the truth is needed by the whole world. We must not become a global anti-utopia. We have a chance to avoid this. We need education, we need knowledge, and we need everyone who cares to unite. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Zelenska, for your remarks. And also thank you for agreeing to engage in conversation with all of us. Dr. Karen Donfried from Harvard Kennedy School Belfer Center generously agreed to lead the conversation. And before I will ask the First Lady of Ukraine and Dr. Donfried to get on that podium and into the chairs, I will make a short introduction of Dr. Donfried. Dr. Karen Donfried is a senior fellow at the Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs at the Kennedy School of Government, which is also one of the co-sponsors of this event. Yesterday, September 23rd, she assumed a new role as director of the Congressional Research Service, which provides objective, nonpartisan, and authoritative research and analysis to members of Congress and staff. We are really grateful, thankful. On the second day of your appointment, very important one, getting on the plane, coming here. Thanks a lot, dear Karen. Previously, before this appointment here at Harvard, Dr. Donfried served as Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs. And in that role, she was Secretary of State Blinken's top advisor on the region and had the honor of meeting Ukraine's First Lady. And you served in that position between 2022 and 2023, and that's the moment of the start of the all-out war. From 2014 to 2021, she served as president of the German Marshall Fund, of the United States, a nonprofit organization dedicated to strengthening transatlantic cooperation through policy analysis, fellowships for next generation of leaders, and support for civil society. So it is my honor now to invite the First Lady of Ukraine, Olena Zelenska, and Dr. Karen Donfrid to take chairs and start the conversation. Thank you.
Well, it is wonderful to be here, and I think the fact that I started a new job yesterday and am here today shows that I would travel just about anywhere, any day of the week, to have the privilege of welcoming and having a conversation with Ukraine's First Lady. And as Sergei mentioned, I did have the privilege of engaging with her earlier. And before I jump into that, I just do want to add a very warm welcome to you from the Belfer Center at Harvard Kennedy School to echo that of the Institute of Politics and the Ukrainian Institute. We are all just delighted that you're spending this time with us. And when I was working at the State Department, I had the honor of traveling with my First Lady, with First Lady Jill Biden, to go to Ukraine to meet with you in what has turned out to be the early days of this tragic war that Russia has launched against Ukraine. And as I was thinking about our conversation today, I was reflecting on the rather unusual role of First Ladies. You know, when you think about it, it's a position that's defined in many ways by the job of your husband, with no formal power. Yet, when we look at the role you've played over these 2.5 years, we have an example of how effectively you've harnessed the soft power that this role provides. And, you know, one example that leapt to my mind was the summits of First Ladies and gentlemen that you've organized. Earlier this month, you organized the 4th summit, and you focused on protecting children during the war, their physical safety, as well as their psychological well-being. And I wanted to ask you, what is most important for us to understand about the work you're doing in those summits, and what are you planning that Ukraine will do in the short term on those issues? Thank you.
Дуже дякую за
Thank you very
такі
much
слова.
for
Я почекаю,
the
поки
warm words. I will
всі
wait for
знову
everyone
вдягнуть
to
свої
put on their
headset.
headphones.
Я пам'ятаю нашу зустріч.
I do remember our meeting.
І це дійсно було дуже важливо.
It was really very
Величезний
important.
такий поштовх
It was a
підтримки на
huge
початку
boost for
страшного
support
повномасштабного
at the
вторгнення,
very
коли
start of the full-out
ще,
war,
трішечки
when
розгублені, і в
we
тебе є
were
тільки,
lost.
палке бажання
Um,
пручатися, але ти не
only
знаєш,
the
куди
only thing we want to do is to
чином,
resist, but we didn't
почати свою
know how to
роботу,
do it,
почати,
where to start,
своє бажання втілювати.
how to
Дякую за згадку
make
про,
do something with this desire to resist. Thank you very much for recalling the summit of the First Ladies and Gentlemen. It was an idea that was first happened in 2021, before the start of the war. It took place in Kyiv. And the summit was created as an international platform for dialogue for spouses of presidents and prime ministers, so that we shouldn't just be plus ones in the diplomatic protocols, but we could, in fact, work on humanitarian and social projects that each one of us has to join our efforts, to exchange knowledge, experience, to help each other to see ourselves in these roles. This is a role that you get, and it brings with itself opportunities and issues, because your partner, your spouse, becomes an elected leader of your country, and it is sometimes difficult to understand what things you can do, what things you can't do, and sort of what universe you're in. And I am happy that we didn't just come together, we develop each year. And each year there's more and more participants, and our discussions become more and more expert. Yesterday, the side event that I already mentioned, it was a side event of the First Ladies and Gentlemen Summit on the sidelines of the UN. I think this is a big achievement we can be proud of. And the last summit in Kyiv was dedicated to the safety of children. We had 4 subject matters on which we focused our attention, and we had wide discussion panels on these themes. But of course, the most important theme for us is the safety of children in a time of war. Unfortunately, Ukraine now has the most recent and probably the deepest kind of experience in this area, unfortunately. We know that there are always armed conflicts in the world, but we don't want our experience to disappear in vain. Everything that Ukraine has done for its children and its experience can be used by other countries in other crisis situations. Second panel was about the safety of children in the family. Paradoxically, family should be the safest place for a child, where the child should feel very safe. However, unfortunately, domestic violence, kidnapping, and other very bad things for the children are still a danger for children in the family. We talked about this. We talked about the social effects of these things. There's also the difference between being safe and feeling safe. But of course, psychological balance is important also for children in school. There's also the digital world, which helps us to grow up and develop, but it also it contains a lot of dangers. It's cyberbullying, the exploitation of children for cyber crimes. And this panel that included a lot of foreign experts and Ukrainian experts discussed this. And we also had a cross-cutting panel, the environmental safety, what we're going to leave behind for our children, what is happening to the world right now. And of course, we talked about the war, what the war is doing to the environment in Ukraine. We already have a number of natural protected areas that have been destroyed with endangered animals and plants that we may not be able to see again. So a great number of things to talk about, and as a result, we came up with a joint declaration of the Summit of the First Ladies and Gentlemen on the protection of children. And yesterday we presented a practical document with practical recommendations and a roadmap as to how the governments and official authorities or institutions or public institutions can act, what they can do in a situation of war or armed conflict, what to do about evacuation, medical help, what to do about education, social protection, what to do about how to combat crime. In fact, we are working on our legislation we are introducing into the law things that would help to combat crime against children, regulations about investigations, pre-trial procedures. And this is a large document that we presented to the international community. This is our lived experience, painful experience, but we hope that it will help to protect many more children.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that with us. And you won't be surprised to hear that in preparing for this, I spent quality time on your official website. And I was reading a summary of an interview that you gave in August. And you emphasized your comments, what you were referring to a proposal about ceding territories for the sake of peace. And you said, and I'm quoting, "In many myths around the world, there is a plot about a dragon to whom a girl is regularly sacrificed to appease the monster. But the truth is, evil cannot be appeased. The same goes for the aggressor state. If you give the attacker time, they will use it to strengthen themselves. And in 5, 8, 10 years, it will be our children who have to resist them. Only those who have lost no one can propose such a truce. Meanwhile, Russia is coming up with new ways to kill us." So your comments suggest that a negotiated settlement with Russia is not possible. So I wanted to ask, how do you see the war ending?
Дуже дякую. Мені здається, що все ж таки
Thank you
питання до
very much. I think
президента.
this is probably a question for the president, not for the first lady. However, I do have my own opinions, but I have to be very careful in what I say, because anything I say as a first lady can be perceived as the opinion of the president, which is not the case, but very often we have to look both ways. I can repeat the point about the dragon and the sacrifice, because this is what we see in this war. It didn't start in 2022. It started in 2014. And when the aggressor was being appeased, it was the global politics of our partners. They were trying not to not to worsen the crisis, as they seem to think, not to give a resolute answer, not a decisive answer. But after 8 years, the aggressor stored up some strength and they just pressed further. Of course, any war ends with a negotiation, and this one will as well. However, Ukraine in this negotiation will be in a situation when it can dictate its own terms, not the other way around. This is the only way that we can stand through it and to reestablish our internationally recognized borders. I'd like to add an example of a reason why you can't stop with it, why you have to stop the aggressor now if we don't want our children to fight in a few years. At war currently, we have a great number of grown men. Ukrainian army at the moment is mostly men of 40 years of age and older. There are also men who have grandchildren, and all of them are saying that the reason they're fighting is to make sure their children won't have to. At the 4th summit, we had the president come and speak to us, and I'm very grateful, always grateful to him when he comes to our summits. And he said something that really moved me. He told a story about some Ukrainian soldiers. I don't know where he heard it, but we all hear these stories in Ukraine. We all relate these stories. There's a great number of them. After a fight two soldiers come back to their position. They're exhausted, they're barely alive, and they're very happy to have survived. And one of them is older, and the other one is a bit younger. And the older one says to his comrade, "I am so happy you were with me today. You are very reliable. I don't think I would have made it through today without you. Where were you in 2014?"
Відповів в 10
And
класі.
the other one said, "I was in grade 10."
І ну, це ми маємо просто це зупинити.
We have to stop this. Really have to stop this.
Чим довше буде ця війна
The longer
тривати,
this
але з
lasts,
такими
this war, the longer it lasts, with little pauses to give the aggressor an opportunity to catch his breath, the more stories of this kind we'll have. We don't want our children who are going to school now. We don't want them to be in this war still. We don't want it to last long enough. It's not the history that we dream of.
I think all of us did not only hear that response, but we felt that response. And, you began that response by saying, it's always a danger when you're a first lady that people think you're speaking for your husband. And I just want to say, I know you have your own opinions, and we are so grateful to you for sharing them with us today. You not only have your own opinions, you have your own foundation. And you established that foundation to help Ukraine meet many of its urgent needs. You work on a broad range of issues, from rebuilding a hospital in Izium that Russian missiles destroyed, to helping children continue their education during wartime, whether getting laptops to the front lines or building bomb shelters in schools. I wanted you to talk about that work and share with us where you think you've had the most impact.
Дуже дякую за це запитання.
Thank you very much for this question.
Воно, до речі, вчасне, тому що
It's very timely because it is almost exactly 2 years ago that the foundation was established. We did this in New York at the Metropolitan Opera. And we were very lucky that our friends from the Metropolitan Opera allowed us to do it there. And yes, it was established as a response to the humanitarian challenges that I kept seeing. And the First Lady had to respond somehow, but it didn't have the resources to respond in the volume that in the measure that I would like to have done that. So it's a popular story. Many First Ladies create their own foundations, and I resisted doing that because I didn't really want. I was being very cautious. I didn't really want to deal with large amounts of money. But I came to the understanding that I had to use my connections to help Ukrainians. And the format of the foundation is such that all of the fundraising is happening abroad. We decided not to burden Ukrainian businesses anymore. And also there's a component of potential corruption because many Ukrainian entrepreneurs, rich people, would have liked to become partners of the First Lady in any kind of a project. However, there could be different expectations that people might expect from our cooperation. So in order to be independent in Ukraine, I decided that I'm going to ask for help from our friends abroad. And over the last 2 years, I'm sure that we've already done a lot. Apart from what you have already mentioned, we also work on building shelters in schools and kindergartens. We are working on 12 hubs of this kind. 4, if I'm not mistaken, we have completed, and children can already continue their studies there. We are also handing over laptops and tablets for those regions where it's impossible for children to go to school physically. And one of the areas, the big areas, is the support for big foster families. So overall, the foundation decided to promote and support foster families and large foster families, especially in a difficult time such as war. Children that do not have parents become even more vulnerable, and these families that take children in, I believe, is a very good format that provides the warmth of a family to children who cannot be, say, adopted for some reason, or get another opportunity, another chance at a family life. And there's a lot of internally displaced persons now. Imagine a family who used to live in Kherson region. These are our friends. They had 10 children, and one day they had to evacuate extremely quickly because their city was being occupied. And they, I don't know how, but they all escaped on one motorcycle. I'm not sure how. I think maybe they were going back and forth to get everyone. It's very difficult for me to imagine how this trip worked. Imagine this big family relocating to a different region. Of course, they will be warmly welcomed by the new community. But 10 children needs something that needs a big house. They need special conditions. So accommodation, housing is the biggest problem for them. And the foundation decided that we're going to build homes for them. And the first wave has now been completed. 14 homes have been built. They're big, they have everything they need. They are located in different regions of Ukraine, and they were received by various communities. We changed the design of these homes a little bit. We are now using lessons learned, and I've actually used my architectural education. I think this is now much more efficient and much better. And there's another theme, that's mental health. As the First Lady of Ukraine, I initiated the national program for mental health, and this is something that's very dear to me. I believe it's one of the most important themes for the people today. And of course, Ukrainian people are suffering a great psychological burden. And it's now been 18 months that the foundation has been supporting projects related to psychological rehabilitation of children. We have initiated partnership projects. These are camps for children who have been traumatized by the war. Perhaps they've seen their loved ones being killed, or they survived the occupation. And psychologists and psychotherapists have already diagnosed them. And these children have an opportunity to go to this a more peaceful region of Ukraine for rehabilitation, and we have very good results. We've funded a number of these camps, and now we're working on a bigger project related to mental health, and we're looking for donors for this project. And I am sure that it will be one of the parts of the national program for mental health. We will focus on children and adolescents and young people. And I am sure that this project will probably last a few years. And I really hope it will last a few years, but at the end it will not be related to the war. It will be related to mental health of children and adolescents in a peaceful Ukraine.
Well, that work is so important, and I think none of us overlook the background to why you are focused on building bomb shelters in school and finding ways for families of 10 to escape Kherson and build new housing and the mental health challenges. But I want my last question to focus also on the celebratory nature of today, which is 50 years of the Ukrainian Institute at Harvard. And when we think about the work of the Ukrainian Institute, which is the leading academic institution focused on Ukraine, certainly in the United States and arguably around the world, the importance of disseminating knowledge about Ukraine is certainly critically important today. You are such a strong supporter of the Global Coalition of Ukrainian Studies, and you talked about it in your opening remarks. And I thought it was really interesting when you said we need to focus on Crimea as well in this global coalition. But surely a huge challenge you face today is Russia spreading disinformation. And I'm curious about how you see that global coalition being able to fight back against Russian disinformation.
Дуже дякую.
Thank you very much for this question. There's a difference between fake information and disinformation and propaganda. Fakes and information can be lies that can be easily verified, and propaganda is a policy that Russia has been pursuing since its imperial times, and appropriating the culture and history of other nations that it subjugated, including Ukraine. An incredible number of Ukrainian artists are perceived or believed to be Russian. A great number of Ukrainian important artists are believed to be Russian because everything Russia can grab, it claims for itself. So when we talk about propaganda, let's imagine any educated person, a European or an American, when they receive information, they want to verify it. They will consult a trusted source. And we need to have these academic sources that we can rely on, because Russia has created a large platform, quote unquote, the glorious Russian culture. And we need to explain to the world that not all have academic works. We need to have conferences where we can talk about it. This is a huge job, and we need years to be successful at this job. But we need to start with doing something small. We had a Ukrainian poet who said, you need to keep chipping away at this rock, at this mountain. And I think the Ukrainian studies in Harvard is the first brick in this foundation that we're going to rely on. Without academic knowledge, without the help of the academic community, we will not be able to speak up for our rights, because otherwise we have to respond to this propaganda. We have to react. Otherwise, it's going to be really bad, and I don't want to talk about it. This really gives us strength. It gives us strength to fight, to know that we have something solid to rely on, and we have a solid foundation for communicating with the world.
Well, I can't think of a better compliment to the Ukrainian Institute than giving strength to Ukrainians who are fighting every day, and on to 50 more years. And now I do want to open it up to all of you. So, I'll call on folks, and please just introduce yourselves and ask a question. So who wants to jump in? Okay, we'll start right here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here with us, and thank you for speaking to us about so many wide-ranging topics. I'm Emily Channel Justice. I'm the director of the Temirtay Contemporary Ukraine program at the Ukrainian Research Institute. My question has to do actually with some of the initiatives related to your foundation. So I'd love your thoughts talking about the recent data that came out from the Ministry of Veterans Affairs. Ukraine has 1.2 million registered veterans. That number will potentially reach 5 to 6 million by the time the war is over. So you've been involved in supporting some important and impactful initiatives, such as the Superhuman Center in Lviv, which I had the pleasure of visiting in person last week. But unfortunately, these initiatives remain fairly small, just simply because of the capacity. So what are some of the ways that Ukrainian policy should change to continue to support veterans? And what are some of the changes that you would like to see in Ukrainian society more broadly in order to support their post-war reintegration? Thank you.
Дуже дякую вам за увагу до
Thank you very much for
Superhuman Center.
the attention to superhumans. However, it's not the only center in Ukraine. There is a number of public or state-owned centers. They're not as fancy as Superhumans, possibly. However, they are also deserving of our attention. And I always want to mention that we don't leave our veterans to their own devices. We have a wide system of help for them. Of course, there's a great number of needs, and it's not always possible to respond to them at the level that superhumans are doing. However, state policy is developing, and I have expectations from the new leadership of the Ministry of Veterans Affairs. I hope they will be successful. They're very active, and they're really keen on changes. What else can be done for the veterans? The Ukrainian National Program for Mental Health, the last wave of it, was dedicated to people with experience of war. And it wasn't just a general communication campaign. It was we created a training course to train trainers who will then disseminate this information about how to communicate with people who have experienced war, how to talk to them, how to be non-discriminatory, what questions you can ask, what you probably shouldn't ask, how to thank a soldier, how to respond to the emotions that you can see from a soldier when you are communicating with them. Not everyone wants attention from you, and not everyone will respond favorably when you start talking to them. So as a society, we need to get used to the idea that we are changing. And some of the members of our society who were involved in active hostilities, of course, they suffer from the greatest psychological burden. And we don't want to widen the divides that, of course, will be there. Any society after the war suffered from these divides, and unfortunately will have that as well. Where were you? Did you collaborate? Did you fight? Why did you leave? How did you leave? Why did you not come back? All of these questions are being asked. And the most important thing is that they do not break us apart, that they don't divide us, that we find the right response to all of these painful questions that will be haunted by for many, many years. So I hope that it will work, because at the moment, the National Program for Mental Health is now trickling down to the regions, and we now have the umbrella method for training. Tens of thousands of people are getting training. This is frontline staff, police, healthcare professionals, emergency workers, transport workers, banking sector workers. So anyone who is well placed to provide fast psychological assistance should have the knowledge, should have the training. So I think we're moving in the right direction, but there's a lot of work to do. But we do not stop for a minute. I can see a great number of Ukrainians who are very active, both in the public sector and private sector. And by the way, how I see myself in this program and my role, what I'm trying to do is to make sure that the public sector and the private sector can hear each other, because sometimes they are doing the same thing, but there are differences that they cannot get over, old mistrust of each other. And that's something that stands in the way of people cooperating. And I want to remove that and to help them do what a healthy society should be doing.
Was there another question? Maybe we'll go in the back.
Hi, my name is Devin Tatlow. I work for Tabliatochki, which, as you know, is the largest Ukrainian children's cancer charity. And I mean, what we've seen from Russia's aggression with, the recent bombing of Okhmadit, children's hospital in Kyiv, is just getting worse and worse. And I feel like at the same time, the world is starting to turn away. And so my question is, how can we make sure to keep the eyes of the world on Ukraine and on Russia's war crimes? And what is the role of the global community, particularly in health and with kids?
Дуже дякую.
Thank you very much. You mentioned Okhmadit just now, the largest Ukrainian children's cancer hospital, and because of that, the focus of attention returned back to Ukraine from the world. Unfortunately, the human psyche is such that it is always spiked, the attention is always spiked by tragedy, but everyone is getting used to Ukrainian tragedies. They've been going on for almost 3 years. However, Okhmadit and the terrible images of children going through chemotherapy with the IV drips outside in the street by the destroyed building, of course, that again engendered a lot of emotions. I can tell you what we feel in Ukraine. We do not want new tragedies to bring the focus of attention back on Ukraine. It's enough. We've had enough. So this is why we're looking for other ways to influence and to draw attention to our struggle. So I guess that's what the soft power diplomacy means. You use emotions to create and build bridges between countries, and this is how academic communities such as the Ukrainian Institute and Harvard can do for us, to talk about Ukraine through culture, through scientific conferences, or at the diplomatic level, our Ukrainian contribution can be made to various international projects. We need to be more active. We need to be everywhere. We need to remind the world about ourselves. Otherwise, yes, there is a chance that we'll have to wait for more new tragedies to bring the focus of attention back. We don't want to do that. And it is very hurtful when somebody in the world gets used to our war. We can feel that it's painful. It's painful to see from inside the country how, on the outside, people start paying more attention to their own personal business. Of course, we can't be so impudent that as to continue demand for special treatment. But inside Ukraine, we can't do anything about it. We need support from the world. And when there's not enough support, it is painful, and we talk about it.
So I'm going to make myself very unpopular by saying we are at the close of this session. And First Lady Zelensky, you did such a beautiful job of bringing this conversation back to the relevance of soft power. And you've made clear to all of us how effectively you are wielding soft power in your role as First Lady. I would like to express my thanks to you, but I would like to turn back to Professor Plokhii to close the session.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I don't think I need to use any words. The applause that came show clearly the appreciation that all we have for you being here, for the conversation. Karen, thanks a lot again for being here, for flying all the way from Washington, D.C. I ask everyone to stay seated for a moment while the First Lady and her team will exit this room. Just a few moments, and then after that you can follow as well. There is another meeting that awaits First Lady and her team here at Harvard. Thanks again. Thank you.
Thank you.